In the 1920s, young women lined up for the best job in America. Good pay, glamorous work, and a strange little secret perk. At night, their skin would glow in the dark. They called it the wonder job. They didn't know it was already killing them. This is the true story of the Radium Girls. Welcome back to Landmark Legacy, where every monument has a story it never told. 1917. A new element had just amazed the world: radium. It glowed on its own. No electricity, no flame, just a soft, eerie green light that never went out. Scientists barely understood it, but companies already knew how to sell it. Toothpaste, face cream, even water you could drink, all promising the miracle glow of radium. And in factories across New Jersey, Illinois, and Connecticut, a new industry exploded almost overnight. Watches with glow-in-the-dark dials. Someone had to paint those tiny numbers by hand, thousands of them a day. The job went almost entirely to young women, some barely out of school. The pay was nearly triple what other factory jobs offered. They were taught a simple technique to keep their brush tips sharp and fine. Put the brush between your lips. Twirl it into a point. Dip, paint, repeat. Over and over, thousands of times a shift. Nobody told them what was on that brush was radioactive. Here's the part the companies never told their workers. The scientists in the very same building never touched radium with bare hands. They used lead screens, ivory-tipped tongs, heavy protective aprons. They knew exactly what radium could do to living tissue. But on the factory floor, women were told it was harmless. Some were even told it was good for their health, that the glow would give them rosy cheeks, a healthy shine. So they didn't just paint with it. They wore their good dresses to work and dabbed a little radium paint on them for fun, so they'd glow at dance halls that night. They painted their nails with it. Some even painted their teeth to surprise their boyfriends with a glowing smile in the dark. They had no idea. Every dip of that brush was radiation, absorbed straight into their bones. A few years passed. Then the women started getting sick. It began quietly, a toothache that wouldn't heal. Then the tooth would fall out on its own. Then the jawbone underneath it began to crumble. Doctors had never seen anything like it. They called it radium jaw. Some women's jawbones became so fragile, doctors could remove pieces of it by hand, painlessly, because the bone itself was dying from the inside. Others developed anemia. Their bones fractured without warning, just from standing up. The radium hadn't just coated their brushes. It had settled permanently into their bones. Mistaken by their own bodies for calcium, it never left. It kept irradiating them from the inside for the rest of their lives. One woman, Grace Fryer, watched her co-workers die one after another. Doctors, dentists, even her own employer told her it wasn't the radium. She didn't believe them. So in 1927, Grace did something almost no factory worker had ever done. She decided to sue. Grace Fryer spent 2 years just trying to find a lawyer willing to take her case. Everyone was afraid to go up against the company. Finally, in 1927, she found one. She was joined by 4 other women from her factory. The press started calling them the Radium Girls. By the time the case reached court, some of the women were so weak they couldn't raise their arms to take the oath. The company's lawyers didn't deny that radium caused their illness. They argued something far colder, that the statute of limitations had already expired, because the damage began years earlier, even if the women hadn't known it yet. Newspapers across the country picked up the story. Public outrage grew fast. In 1928, facing a media storm it couldn't survive, the company finally agreed to settle. The Radium Girls won. Not a fortune, but something far more important. For the first time in American history, a company was held financially responsible for slowly poisoning its own workers on the job. But the fight wasn't over. A decade later, in Illinois, another group of dial painters were dying the exact same way. Their case dragged through appeals for years. The company kept fighting. One woman, Catherine Wolfe Donahue, became too sick to even walk into the courtroom. So the hearing was moved into her own living room. She testified from a chair, too weak to stand, her jaw destroyed by the same poison. In 1938, the Illinois Supreme Court ruled in her favor. She had won. Catherine died just months later. But her case, alongside Grace Fryer's, helped force real change. Stronger workplace safety laws, new rules protecting workers from hidden industrial poisons. Their fight became part of the foundation for the labor protections American workers still rely on today. Today, decades later, some of these women's graves still register faint traces of radiation. The element that once made them glow with pride is the same one that never let them go. But their story didn't end in tragedy alone. Because of Grace Fryer, Catherine Wolfe Donahue, and every woman who stood beside them, workplace safety laws changed forever. Every worker today who's protected from hidden industrial poisons owes something to a group of young women who simply refused to stay silent. They didn't just glow in the dark. They lit the way for everyone who came after them. If this story moved you, hit subscribe, because at Landmark Legacy, every episode uncovers a story history almost forgot.